Welcome back to Home Gym Hacks and Reviews. Today I'll be covering the machine that I've been asked to review more than any other, the Fettle Fitness Pendulum Squat. Stay tuned. One of the reasons I sold more than half of my home gym equipment a couple of months ago was to make room for this, but it was out of stock for quite a few months, so I waited patiently. This is my fourth Fettle machine. My first Fettle piece was the pull down, which I got about 5 months ago. Immediately, I was impressed by the machine, the ordering and shipping process, and the company as a whole. I followed the pull down with the bench press, and I love the converging arms on the machine, and it also works decently well as an incline press. I followed the bench press with the ISO row. Up until now, I think the ISO row was my favorite. Fettle is fairly new in this space, but I am glad I took a chance on them because I think their stuff is very good, and as I've said before, I think it's hammer strength quality without the hammer strength prices. In doing some research on the Pendulum Squat, I found a man named Tyler Hobson who created the Pendulum Squat Pro, and that doesn't look exactly like this one because to use it, your feet are flat on the floor rather than on an angled platform. And then there was a man named Randy Coyle who invented the Swing Squat in 1979, and then he revised that in 1997, so I feel like a lot of these Pendulum Squats are modeled after that. And then there are plenty of other brands, many more expensive, like Atlantis, Predator, Paramount, Arsenal, and Panada, and for a lot of those, the price isn't even listed on the website, which 9 times out of 10 means that it's out of my price range. And while those more expensive machines may have more bells and whistles, like band pegs and an adjustable platform, I can't justify the price increase to buy one of those for a machine that's going to be in my garage gym with only me and my wife using it. And I don't think, for example, that I'm going to see a huge increase in muscular size by using one of the more expensive models over this model right here. I wasn't home for the delivery, so my wife took care of everything, and she did a great job as usual. It shipped via T-Force freight. I got it in about a week from the date that it left the warehouse. T-Force gave me a window of between 1 and 4, and they were here shortly after 1. I stand by T-Force being the best shipping company of all. The driver said that he remembered my house, and he remembered being here 3 other times, which I thought was kind of funny. I gave my wife $10 to tip him, which I always try to do. And when I got home, it was a beautiful sight to see the machine in the driveway. After waiting quite a few months for it to get back in stock, the Fettle Fitness Pendulum Squat is finally here. Here's what it looks like with the first layer of plastic off. It's nicely bubble wrapped. The machine is strapped to the pallet. And there's the sandpaper tape that's going to go on the platform. And with all of the plastic off the machine, it is in great condition. Even down here where they strapped the machine to the pallet, they put bubble wrap between the strap and the machine just to ensure that the paint didn't get damaged. Stuff like that goes a long way with me. Here I'm using my daisy chains to pull the machine off of the pallet and onto the plywood that I have in the driveway. Next step is putting scooters under the front of the machine. It's getting kind of dark, so it might be hard to see, but I was able to push the Pendulum Squat off of the pallet and onto my scooters, and now I'll just simply roll the scooters into the garage. With 1 scooter and 2 carpet sliders, the Pendulum Squat slides pretty easily. Today is not leg day, so I'm not going to go all out, even though I want to, and I'm going to share some initial impressions with this machine. This is the first time I've ever done a dedicated pendulum squat. Of course, I use the PowerTech lever squat like a pendulum squat, but it's not quite the same as this, and I honestly have not tried this with any weight yet, so it will be interesting to see how it goes. I have been told this machine is very humbling, so it'll be interesting to see how 245s feels. I haven't even put the grip tape on the platform yet. .245s is hard, much harder than I expected. But it feels very good, it feels very smooth, no joint pain, so far I am very happy with this machine. Now I'm going to perform the exercise with that same 90 pounds, only on the opposite end I have a 45-pound plate that kind of serves as a counterweight, and it helps me a little bit in the very bottom of the position. I'll see if it's noticeable. See if I struggle as much. It's still tough. I'm not sure if I noticed that much of a difference, but it felt good. My initial impression for the Fettle Fitness Pendulum Squat, This thing is a beast. I am really looking forward to using it more, and I'll report back. This machine is a tank. It has a 1,000 pound weight capacity, and it weighs about 350 pounds, but the overall footprint isn't too large at 72 inches by 33.5 inches by 58.5 inches. So the length will be a limiting factor for some home gyms, but the height is perfect for basement gyms with a low ceiling. It's made with 8 to 11 gauge steel, and the frame has a 10-year warranty. The footplate is 23.5 inches by 31.5 inches, and the angle is about 42 degrees. The uprights are a massive 4 inches by 4 inches. The pads are dense, yet still comfortable. In fact, the shoulder pads are 4.5 inches thick, and the back pad is contoured. Each weight horn has 11 inches of loadable space, and a rubber stopper so you don't have metal on metal, and the weight horns are angled so collars aren't needed. There are 2 stopper points for depth, and I need the higher of the 2. There are also 2 hook catches, and I use the higher of the 2. The welds are clean and would rival any manufacturer. This machine sells for $1,745, and freight is about $300. To use the machine, simply engage the weight, turn the handle back towards you, perform your reps, and when you're done, turn the handle back so that the hook engages that pin. Today is my quad emphasis training day, and I'm going to start off using the Rhino, and I'm going to follow that by the pendulum squat. I will admit that I am a little bit sore from experimenting with the pendulum squat, so it'll be interesting to see if my numbers are lower on the Rhino. After a few warm-up sets, I was ready for my 1 work set on the Rhino. I'm still doing my own version of HIIT training, and I'm 6 months into that. I wear my Nikes for close stance squats as the heel elevation helps me reach depth. However, with a wide stance, I remove my shoes. In a wide stance, I can lift considerably more on the Rhino, and while I don't do a lot of heavy singles, I had to try 845s at least once. Moving on to the pendulum squat for my second quad exercise. Moving on to 225s. I have no problem reaching depth with this machine, and the spinal loading is marginal compared to a back squat. I find it to be very easy on the knees and ankles, especially with how little weight is needed. The back pad offers a lot of stability, so my focus can be on the legs and not the core. I don't have to place my hands behind my head like I would for barbell squats, which aggravates my shoulder. This exercise requires some control, and I wouldn't recommend speedy reps like some may perform on the leg press. And the exercise will likely work great for someone with long legs. On this leg day, I was still trying to find the right foot position that works best for me, and 225s was the correct weight for my work set. Please don't make fun of me. Instead, I hope you will appreciate how challenging the machine is. And luckily, if I did reach failure, the safety is there to catch me before I completely bottom out. Over on the Rhino, my work set was 5 45s and a 25 plus the weight of the carriage, which is about 27 pounds, compared to the amount of weight that I was using on my work set with the pendulum squat at 225s. I will be able to lift more over here, but just right out of the gate, this is extremely difficult, and it takes a fraction of the weight that you would experience when you're using a leg press or a hack squat or other leg machines. This counterbalance option is extremely helpful for someone like my wife who's recovering from hip surgery and will need a knee replacement at some point. And I have a feeling when I get her on here, the 55-pound starting weight of the machine is just going to be too much. So with a 45-pound plate on there or a band, I'll have her get on here, and that plate will help her out just a little bit at the very bottom of the squat. And this can also be useful for someone who, for example, may have a lot of weight on there and has a 45-pound plate on here to start with, and over the course of weeks or months, they gradually reduce the weight that's on this counterbalance post and maybe go from a 45 to a 35 to a 25 to none at all. In addition to putting a plate on the counterbalance weight horn, I can also use a band, which will help me just a little bit in the very bottom of the squat. While experimenting with the pendulum squat, I found adding bands is a great way to add a little extra resistance at the very top of the squat, and they're very easy to attach. Just wrap them around the bottom of the frame and over the weight horns. While this is a very specialized machine and it doesn't offer a lot of versatility, it's certainly good for a one-legged pendulum squat. And it sure doesn't take a lot of weight to feel effective. When I went back and watched videos of me using the pendulum squat, I noticed my heels were lifting slightly. And it is important to note the pendulum squat delivers forward pressure to begin with. So on this set, I really focused on pushing my heels down. However, in these Nike Metcons, the shoe looks as if the heel is raising. When I removed my shoes, the issue wasn't there. So I think it will be wise to use the pendulum in something other than my Nikes. I've had some requests to compare this machine to some of my other leg machines, and it's a little bit tricky because I'm comparing something that's brand new to other machines where I have hundreds of sets and thousands of reps using, but I'll do my best to share my initial thoughts. So why this machine over a hack squat? Well, I haven't used a hack squat for over 15 years because my initial lower back injury came on the hack squat machine during my DC training days when I was pushing myself very close to failure on the set and I bottomed out on the ascent. And ever since that injury, I've had to be very careful with my exercise selection. And also, for whatever reason, the hack squat always seemed to aggravate my knees. But this is long before people started doing reverse bands on it, and I haven't tried it since. So my issues with the hack squat are more personal rather than a knock on the machine. Prior to this machine, the closest I got to using a pendulum squat was the PowerTech lever squat. When I initially got it, I was pushing up. However, after having it for a while, I started pushing back, which transformed the exercise for me. It felt very effective, but it lacked the backrest this machine offers, and the backrest aids in stability. The Fettle is more comfortable, but it's also more than double the price. When I compare this to the Squat Max, of course it doesn't match the versatility of the Squat Max, and it's too soon to say I like it better than the Squat Max, but the Squat Max will not hit the quads as hard as the Fettle Pendulum, and conversely, the Fettle Pendulum will not hit the glutes as hard as the Squat Max does, especially when the Squat Max's transformer pin is being used. Now let's compare this to the PowerTech leg press, which I have said is the most economical leg press on the market, and the PowerTech compact leg sled, which I have said is the most lower back friendly leg machine I've used. I had plenty of good years of training using both machines, but each one required me to load it with more than 12 45s for my work sets, so it's really nice only 2 25s are needed for the same effort as 14 45s on the compact leg sled. The pendulum is a bit bigger than the leg press and about $500 more, and the pendulum is quite a bit larger than the sled and about double the price. The pendulum is more of a quad bias exercise than either of the PowerTech pieces, but in a well-stocked gym, there is room for a combination of any of those machines. As for DIY pendulum squats, I transformed the lever gym squat into an exercise that closely mirrored a pendulum squat, and the Henny attachment is another option for an inexpensive DIY pendulum squat, but rarely, if ever, will a DIY or hack rival a machine specifically designed for a given exercise. On to the Rhino, which I have said is my favorite machine of all time. Of course, the Rhino wins for versatility: narrow squats, wide squats, split squats, rows, deadlifts, curls, shrugs, and more. However, I really like the fact I can get the same level of effort out of 2 45s on the pendulum as I can out of 8 45s on the Rhino. If my only concern was to find the absolute best quad bias exercise I could find, I'm probably taking the Fettle over the Rhino. But if someone says you can only have one, the Rhino remains king of the garage. Next, here's my take on this counterweight post back here. I think it's extremely beneficial for someone to add plates on there who has trouble with the starting weight of the machine, and I like that this one is not fixed, so I can add plates, take plates away, and if I want, I don't have to have anything on there at all. Where if I compare this to some other pendulum squats, the weight is fixed, like the Arsenal, which has the tombstone back here. That weighs 160 pounds, and of course it increases the price of the machine. And for me personally, when I use this, I probably won't have any plates on this post at all. Instead, I'll use a band. Here's the grip tape that comes with the pendulum squat. I'll apply this now. The grip tape will need to be cut to fit. I used a pencil to mark my cut lines and made the cut with my kitchen shears because my wife wasn't home. I only cut a spot where my feet will go, which left plenty to use if it needs to be replaced. Ultimately, I think the Fettle Fitness Pendulum Squat is incredible. It is easily one of the best made machines that I've owned. It's challenging and it takes very little weight to feel effective. I find it to be very joint friendly. I can further enhance the exercise with bands or by putting a plate on the post back there. And there is a reason Paul Carter and Joe Bennett say the pendulum squat is the king of quad exercises because it can bias the quad more than any other leg press. This is commercial rated and it's one of the least expensive options when it comes to pendulum squats. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful, and I sincerely appreciate everyone who watches, likes, comments, subscribes, or uses any of my affiliate links, and some of those links can save you some money. You can find me on other social media platforms at Home Gym Hacks and Reviews, and remember, if your equipment lacks, I got the hacks. Take care, everyone.